Okay, this is our final video in our economics unit, and we are going to talk about what I call overall economic health and overall economic indicators. So I have a picture of a doctor there, and if you think about going to the doctor, there are some things that a doctor will check no matter what you're there for, to see if there are other things wrong. So things like your temperature, your blood pressure, your height, your weight. Doctors check those because they indicate that something else is wrong. Those things in and of themselves aren't problems, but they do indicate that there's something else wrong. So that's what we're going to look at today is what do economists look at and measure um, for the economy, to take its temperature and blood pressure, so to speak, to see what's wrong, and then just like a doctor, what has to be done to make things better. Okay, so a doctor gives you medicine, a doctor, prescribes you something, has some kind of surgical procedure, whatever it is. The economy operates the same way. So if something has to be done, what is it, and how do we know what it is? Okay, so the doctors, so to speak, of the economy is what we call the Federal Reserve System, or the Fed, as you will hear in the news and on the radio. And it's a very powerful group. Um, it's the central banking agency, I guess, and we'll look at that more when we talk about how banks work in our country. But they control how much money is in flow in our country. And then again, they're responsible for monitoring the health of the economy. And later on in this video, we're going to talk about how interest rates are adjusted to control the economy. And this is the group that controls the interest rates in our country. So the Federal Reserve, or Fed, is an extremely powerful and very important government agency. Okay, and then they're going to look at four things. Kind of like I said, with your blood pressure, your temperature, height, weight. They look at four things to kind of see what's going on. The first they look at is gross domestic product. They look at something called the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. They monitor consumer spending. By consumer, I mean you and I. How much money are we spending? And then again, the interest rates, they check those out, and that's usually the adjustment they make, or that's their medicine to raise or lower interest rates. So we'll look at these one by one here. So first is the gross domestic product. So the Federal Reserve is going to, okay, yes, so the gross domestic product. So what is the gross domestic product? It is a humongous, humongous, humongous number. We're talking about in the trillions of dollars. And it is, a dollar amount or a measure of everything that's produced or sold in our country in a year. So that's anything from, a haircut to, a gallon of milk to somebody buying a, $400,000 combine for a farm, and everything in between. It's the hotel rooms, airplanes, rides, a gallon of gas, everything that's bought gets measured. So that is a good way for the Fed to know how our economy is doing. So in a time like now, during a recession, this number is going to go way, way down. So gross domestic product is going to drop, and that's usually the first indication that something's wrong, because we are not spending money. And when we don't spend money, that's kind of like the lighting the fuse, or lighting the match that starts the big fire. So that's the first thing that gets monitored, and that's the GDP, or the gross domestic product. Again, it's a humongous, humongous number. If you can possibly think of, all the things that are bought in our country by all of us in a year. I mean, what a humongous number. But somebody measures it and they keep track of it. So that's the gross domestic product. The next is that CPI, Consumer Price Index. It's a very important number, and what that does is compare the prices for things that we commonly buy. in our country. So anything from, a gallon of milk to a gallon of gas to a hotel room in certain cities. And how much more expensive are those things today as compared to last month and as compared to a year ago today? So this number is almost always going to be positive because as we know, things get more expensive one year to the next. I mean, that's not a big surprise. But what they have to watch out for, and what I have on the screen there, is an unusual increase in prices. And if that happens, then we have an issue. So if things get too expensive too quickly, that's a problem. So that CPI, or that Consumer Price Index, is an important number that the Federal Reserve will look at, because we look at gasoline right now. I mean, it's almost $4.50 a gallon. So that's the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI, has been going up recently way faster than it should be. And we already know there's a problem, so it's not much of a surprise. But again, that number is definitely an indicator that either things are going good or there's an issue. Okay, and that leads to what most of you have probably already heard of, and that's inflation. Um, Again, we know that the prices for products increase. Okay, we know that. It's not a bad thing. However, wages, meaning what you and I make at work, for those of you that have a job, okay, if the CPI up here, let's say it goes up by 1% from 2011 to 2012, did you get a 1% raise at work to keep up with that? So if you did, if you got a raise of 1% at work in your wages, then that's okay, because the CPI went up by 1%, and so you're keeping up with how expensive uh, things are. But if the CPI should go up by 4% and you got a 1% raise, or maybe you didn't even get a raise, that's an issue. That's a problem. That's inflation. So products are getting too expensive too quickly, and we don't make enough money to keep up with that. And if we don't make enough money to buy things, then we don't buy them. And then when we don't buy things, that starts the snowball of a slowed economy. So that's what inflation is. So again, I'm guessing most of you have heard that word, but that's really what it means. Okay, it's like a balloon that gets too big too quick. Eventually it's going to pop. Okay, and we can't have that. Okay, consumer spending is kind of an interesting thing, and you don't realize it, but major retailers like Target or Sears, Best Buy, and all those kind of stores, they actually, Walmart, I'm just throwing names out there, will report their sales every month. Actually, every week they report it to the government to let them know how much money we're spending. So the higher the number, or the more we're spending, the better things are. Because again, as we're spending money, businesses make money, they hire people, people have jobs, they make money, and then you can see how the cycle continues. Then they go out and spend the money, and that's a good thing. When consumer spending goes down, again, that's an issue, and that's what we're kind of in right now, or maybe coming out of. When we don't spend money, we put money in our savings account, we keep it in our checking account, we don't spend it. That slows everything down, and again, that starts a domino effect that just causes problems. So we definitely want an increase in consumer spending, and we want that to remain a positive or high number. Okay, and then lastly, if something has to be adjusted, okay, it's going to be the interest rates. So we're going to talk a lot about interest over the semester, but it's the price you pay for borrowing money. So you know use a credit card, you take out a loan, you got to pay interest. Or if you put your money in the bank to save it, they're going to pay you money. Okay, so it goes both ways. So a change in those rates can dictate, or kind of control, whether you have the ability to borrow money for a major purchase. So what the Fed will do in a time of recession like right now is drastically, and I mean drastically, lower interest rates to try to encourage people to do two things. A, to go out and spend money instead of keeping it in a savings account because you're not making any interest, or go out and borrow money or take out a loan or use a credit card just to get the economy going. So if a family's been waiting around to buy a car, waiting for rates to come down, they're not sure, and then interest rates come way down, maybe they can afford to buy that car now. Or maybe they can afford to put the addition on the house or send someone to college, and everything in between. So as interest rates come down, people are more likely to go out and spend money. Again, that's kind of the spark to try to get a recovery out of a recession, to try to get things going in a positive manner again. And interest rates in our country currently are at the lowest they've ever been. And they've been that way for about 3 or 4 years now. So it's been a gradual recovery, to say it mildly, but you can argue that it has been working a little bit. So again, the interest rate is kind of like the medicine that the Federal Reserve, will give, like a doctor gives, to kind of control what goes on and try to get things back on track. So that is the end of our entire economics unit. So if you need to, please review this or any of the other units, and make sure you go over and take the quiz that's available with this lesson also.